Good evening and welcome back to Sports Talk ATL. I am Chase Earl, joined by Jake Gordon and Alex Sordi. Yesterday was the deadline for the Atlanta Braves to make their decisions on their club options. They don't have any player options because that's not how the Braves operate. They had 5 guys. They only kept one. He was the biggest one, Charlie Morton. Now, I'm assuming this means Charlie Morton is coming back. Like, he made the decision that he's going to retire. I'm assuming there was some sort of communication there. Obviously, if he retires, that doesn't matter. But I'm assuming from everything we've seen, he's decided he wants to play another year. They picked up his option. I thought that's what was going to happen. A little surprised they didn't pick up Eddie Rosario's option. Not totally shocked. Kirby Yates was another guy I could have seen them keeping. Colin McHugh and Brad Hand were always unlikely. Anything that stands out here and looking forward to what the Braves have to accomplish in free agency now that they've got Pierce Johnson back, Jimenez back, Morton back, and then again, they don't have a left fielder now on the roster.
Yeah, no, I thought it was interesting. I would have liked to have kept Kirby Yates, but I mean, I'm not going to sit here and start stomping my feet and have tears streaming down my face over it. I thought he was solid, though. I mean, I thought he was fine. He's definitely somebody you could stick in the middle, middle of the bullpen. He didn't cost, what was it, $4.5 million? I mean, I guess you could do a little bit better with that type of money, but I thought it would have been fine to bring Kirby Yates back. I kind of thought they'd bring Brad Hand back too, but I don't know. Maybe they're looking at some big upgrades. I guess we'll see. There were a couple names. If you check out the site, Chase, I think you wrote about it. The MLB trade rumors, they were doing their predictions. They had some big time names for the Braves on there, but not many bullpen guys. I still think they'll go get a few. I can't remember who was the guy they got yesterday. They got him from Pittsburgh.
Perdomo,
he's not even going to pitch next year. Yeah. So I don't know what they're going to do. I guess we'll see.
I thought that they might decline Charlie Morton's option, not because they didn't want him back, but I figured it could be. I don't even know if this would even be possible, but I thought it could. They declined the option just to give him a little bit more time to decide whether or not he wants to play, because he didn't have all that much time to really decide between because he said multiple times that he wasn't thinking about it while he was playing. So he had probably about a month, less than a month to really decide. Maybe that's all you need. I don't know. It's a big decision. It's a life-altering decision to hang up the cleats. So I thought that it was possible that they could decline it, give him a little bit more time, and just bring him back on a similar deal. I don't even know if the MLB allows that. I don't know why they wouldn't. But I see a lot of people up in arms about, and it's mostly the people who are, don't know what they're talking about, that $20 million is too much money. Well, listen, maybe it's a couple million more than he's worth in terms of WAR, like actual WAR to money dollars. But you don't pinch pennies over that kind of thing. You love Charlie Morton back at that price, especially considering the state of the rotation. The rotation is in flux. I mean, talk about this year and next year. The future of the rotation is in, more question marks than answers, especially with Max Fried set to hit free agency. Charlie Morton could retire after this season. So getting a long-term guy in the rotation should be a priority this offseason. That way you're not kind of, put into a corner next offseason where you have to make a choice out of a necessity and not, value-wise. But I think that these moves were all kind of predictable. I like them all, but I also think that, talking about the Pierce Johnson, Joe Jimenez new deals and the Charlie Morton option, this is a net zero for me. This is all net zero. So we're back to where we kind of were in my eyes. And now it's how much better can we get? How much better can we make the rotation? How much better can we make the bullpen? How much can we upgrade left field? That's where they off. So I think we're at a net zero now. We haven't made many upgrades. We haven't made any upgrades in my eyes. We're just back where we were. And, where we were was a 6th straight NL East title, 100-plus win club. Now, what are we going to do to, make our team better for October? So I think everything we've done thus far is kind of just bringing us back to where we were. And now everything plus is for October.
Yeah, and we talked about this too. Left field might be it's a spot you're going to address now, obviously. But at this point, I mean, besides left field, all you really have to spend on is pitching. So, yeah, I say, go nuts. Have at it. I think you really need to build some depth because, like we've said on the show many times, this is 4 postseasons in a row we've run out of pitching.
Yeah, I mean, Alex, to your point about the whole Charlie Morton retiring thing, like technically he could still retire. It's not like the Braves owe him that money. Like he could retire and walk off the field and there would be no contract. So that's kind of where I was like, oh, well, we haven't really heard anything from Morton. Do we even know if he wants to play? Now the option had to be picked up or declined or whatever. But just from the way like everyone's reporting it, all right, Charlie Morton's back for one season. Like that's the assumption, right? So I assume that like he told the Braves that he wants to play another season and that's why this happened. I don't know. I'm just making assumptions here, but yeah, technically he could just be like, yeah, actually, I don't want to play. I think we saw something happen like that with Tyler Flowers. Now, obviously, Tyler Flowers wasn't nearly as big of a piece, but he like signed a contract and then, right before the season was like, actually, I am going to retire. So technically, he still could do that. Hopefully he's not. I think the big thing with Morton here is the stability he brings to the rotation this year. You really needed something like that. And you weren't going to get anyone in free agency this year for 1 year and $20 million. Like, yes, the AAV is one thing, but the guys that you're signing for $20 million, the Sonny Grays or stuff like that, they're going to get 4, 5, 6 year deals, stuff like that. So a 1 year, $20 million deal for Charlie Morton, completely fair. He had a really good season last year. Nothing looks to be lost on the stuff. I talk about it all the time, but he's still throwing 96, 97 mile per hour with movement. He still has the nastiest curveball in all of baseball. He's still striking out over 10 batters per 9. Yeah, does he give up a couple of home runs here and there? But yeah, you're just going to have to live with that, especially when your rotation only has Max Fried, Spencer Strider, and no one really else. So I still think, yes, top priority. They still have to add one more starter. I don't necessarily think it's going to be a Nola or a Snell or a Gray, even a Gray. I really don't think, because I think at the end of the day, Gray is going to get a 4-year deal. I don't think they're going to give a 34-year-old pitcher when they don't know what they're going to do with Max Fried a 4-year deal at like $80 million. I just don't think they're going to do that. I'd love to see them do it, but that's just not what they've done at any point under Alex Anthopoulos. I think it's much more likely they go after a veteran type guy on a 2-3 year pack, maybe even a 1-year guy. And then hope that guys like AJ Smith-Shawver and Hurston Waldrop and Bryce Elder show a little bit more. So I think the big thing right here is adding depth. But if you look past 2024, with Max Fried being his future uncertain, Charlie Morton's future uncertain, like they do eventually probably have to make a splash. So whether they make it now or whether they make it at the end of next year, I think this deal with Charlie Morton allows them to not have to do something now. But eventually they're going to have to sign a really good free agent pitcher, whether it's this cycle or next cycle, or hope that AJ Smith-Shawver and Hurston Waldrop are absolute studs. But you can't just assume that.
No,
I think Michael Wacha, who you just described, it sounds like Michael Wacha.
I think that is absolutely egregious. Not to you, Jake, but to just, listen, the player development in the Brave system has been very good. You could talk about it at length of how they've just developed. Listen, they don't rank high in any prospect ranking at all, but they consistently produce MLB talent and elite MLB talent at that. And maybe you're hanging your hat on that in terms of the rotation for AJ Smith-Shawver, Hurston Waldrop, like you mentioned. But I think that would just be egregious not to go out and get a sure thing. And I'm not necessarily talking about this year. I'm talking about the future. The future of the rotation has way more questions than answers. And I think that, whether it's this year or next year, it doesn't matter to me. I just think that it would be totally egregious management to just kind of assume both of those guys are going to come up and give you, be your 1, 2, 3 with Spencer Strider. I think you got to go get some stability in the rotation for not just this year, not just next year, but like you said, for 3-4 years down the road. So generally speaking, we look at Alex Anthopoulos' MO. No, this doesn't make any sense. But I think circumstances change habits. And after seeing this rotation continue to flounder in past postseasons, mainly due to injury, I think that maybe AA has learned from his mistakes and he is going to change something, which would be somebody like a Sonny Gray, like you mentioned, 4, 5, 6 years. I don't know why we wouldn't just give that to Max Fried and allocate those funds elsewhere. But I mean, something's got to change. We can't just consistently do the same thing and expect different results, Well, the injury to Max Fried, I think, could definitely, we talk about that elbow and we assume he's okay, but, there still was no clear thing. And I do think that, affects them trying to negotiate an extension with him this offseason. I'd love to see it happen, but then at the same time, the Braves do have to be cautious with a guy who missed most of last year with an elbow injury and is probably going to be asking for something in the $200 million range, especially right now, because he knows he can get something like that in free agency, especially if he has another good year. But
Yeah, I mean, we talk about it being egregious, and I don't disagree with you at all, Alex. I'm just telling you from past experiences what the Braves have done. They've trusted Kyle Wright, and yes, Kyle Wright turned out really good, but he was really bad there for a while. They've trusted Tucker Davidson, they've trusted, and these guys haven't all panned out. They trusted Ian Anderson. Now, do they just trust Herschel Waldrop and AJ Smith-Shawver? Like, you look at the last, you look at all the postseasons the Braves have been over the last 6 years. They haven't had this killer starting staff, except for maybe, what was it, 2022, when they had Fried, Morton, Wright, and Strider. Now, of course, Strider and Fried went on to not be 100%, and you kind of got screwed because of that. But that's really the only time I looked at this rotation going into the playoffs and was like, okay, or the whole season, I was like, oh, that's an elite rotation. They just haven't done it. They've banked on hopefully they're going to outslug you, and sometimes that works, aka 2021. A lot of times it doesn't, because guess what? You're playing really good pitchers, and if you don't start, and if you're not hitting home runs, you can lose a series. So I would love to say that I'm expecting something to change. I would be lying to you if I sat here and told you that.
I just don't know how Anthopoulos continues to watch the same product on the field. Like, he's put together historic offenses. And I mean, last year, 100+ wins. This year, 100+ wins. This year, historic offense. Ronald's going to win the MVP. Matt Olson, top 4 finish. Austin Riley, top 10 finish. The list goes on and on. Michael Harris had another incredible year. Ozzie Albies had an incredible year. The catching duo of Travis d'Arnaud, Sean Murphy. There's a common element in each postseason loss, and this past year was the batting. But how much more can you upgrade that to make it a difference? I mean, at certain points, you got to look at what things are deficient and then upgrade those. I agree with you in the fact that, like, in terms of looking at Anthopoulos' MO, you shouldn't expect something different, but I don't know how he can look at his past and continue to do the same things. That's why maybe I'm hopeful, I'm optimistic that maybe he's learned from his mistakes and he's just going to overkill the pitching staff, because this offense, as it stands, we don't even have to sign a killer left fielder. We can get a one WAR guy and still have one of the best offenses in baseball. That's not what's the difference maker. It's the pitching staff.
Yeah, and we'll get into some free agents later in the show. We'll talk some starting pitchers that we like. We'll talk some left fielders and stuff like that. But I don't necessarily agree with you, and I'm interested to see how he approaches. Coming up out of the break, Jake, you're here. We want to talk about that Missouri-Georgia game, and then also Ole Miss and the Dogs.